I've lived long enough to notice one thing. The folks who've been knocked down hardest are usually quietest about it. They don't complain. They keep moving, hoping somebody will finally see them for who they really are. That kind of moment when one person truly sees another, I witnessed it once on a dusty Kansas road. The knock came at dusk. Daniel hadn't heard footsteps on that road in months. A woman stood at his gate, heavy set, dress gray with dust, shoes worn through. She didn't step forward. "Please," her voice cracked, "take me on. I'll work for free. I just need somewhere to be." He studied her hands. Burn scar on the left wrist, calluses thick on the fingers. Working hands. Her eyes tired, ashamed. But something else lived there. Something that refused to break. He walked past her toward the house. Didn't close the door behind him. "Flowers in the pantry." Her carpet bag hung limp in her grip, nearly empty. What had she left behind? And why had she come all this way to find a stranger's kitchen? We'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop a comment and say hello. If these stories bring a little warmth to your evening, we'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. It helps us keep sharing moments like Clara's with folks who understand what starting over really means. Clara stepped inside. The floorboards groaned under her weight. The kitchen stretched before her, a tomb dressed as a room. Dishes crusted in the basin, stacked 3 weeks deep at least. Grease blackened the stovetop in layers, each one a meal cooked and abandoned. Dust furred the windowsill thick enough to write in. She set her carpet bag in the corner. Didn't unpack. A woman's apron hung on a nail by the stove. Cotton. Faded roses on the fabric. Dust had settled into its folds. Undisturbed for years. Nobody had touched it. Nobody had moved it. Clara didn't ask. She knew grief when she saw it wearing an apron. On the mantel, a photograph lay face down. She didn't turn it over. Wasn't her place. A rocking chair sat by the window. Cushions still pressed with the shape of someone who used to sit there. The shape had gone cold long ago. The smell hit her then. Old coffee. Wood smoke. Something else underneath the sour tang of a man who'd stopped caring whether he lived in a house or a barn. She rolled up her sleeves. The sink first. Through the window. She watched him. Daniel stood by the barn door, eating something from his hand. A cold biscuit, looked like. He chewed without tasting. Didn't sit. Didn't come inside. When darkness finally pulled him through the door, he walked around the rocking chair like it was a grave. His boots tracked mud across the floor she'd just swept. He didn't notice. He didn't go to the bedroom. She heard him settle into a chair by the cold fireplace, leather creaking under his weight. No fire, no lamp. 3 nights now. Same pattern. Clara scrubbed the last pot and set it to dry. Her hands ached, good ache. Honest ache. The kind that meant she'd done something real. She reached for the good china on the high shelf. Her fingers touched the smooth rim. She pulled back. Grabbed tin plates instead, safer, less to break. Less to explain if she dropped something. When she picked up the knife, though, her left hand went steady. Onion. Garlic. The blade moved without thought. This was the only thing they hadn't taken from her. Outside, a coyote called across the dark hills. And somewhere on the road to town, a man in a good suit was asking questions about a woman from Kansas City. Day 4. Clara had the stovetop gleaming by noon. She'd scrubbed it that morning until her knuckles went raw, until the cast iron showed through the years of blackened grease. The pantry stood organized now, flour in the tin marked flour, sugar where sugar belonged, dried beans lined up like soldiers waiting for orders. The coffee beans she'd found buried in the back still smelled good. Small mercy. Now she cooked. The chicken had come from the yard. She'd killed it herself at dawn, her left hand steady on the neck. One quick twist. Cleaned it, jointed it, browned the pieces in the big iron skillet until the skin crisped golden. The fat rendered out, pooling in the pan. And she added onions. They sizzled and softened. Carrots next, cut thick. Thyme from the wild patch behind the barn, she'd found it yesterday. Recognized the smell from 20 years of kitchens. Water, salt, lid on. Wait, the dumplings she mixed by hand? Flour, lard, a pinch of baking powder, buttermilk, just enough to bring it together. She dropped them into the simmering broth one by one, each one a small cloud sinking into the golden liquid. Lid on again. Don't peek. Peeking kills dumplings. The smell filled the house, crept into the walls, into the wood, into corners that hadn't smelled like real food in years. Daniel came in at noon. His boots stopped in the doorway. Clara didn't turn around. She poured coffee into a tin mug, set it on the table, went back to the stove. The dumplings were ready. She lifted them out with her left hand on the spoon, arranged them around the chicken, ladled broth over everything. She set the plate in front of the empty chair, still didn't look at him. The scrape of the chair. The clink of fork against tin. She washed dishes, listened. A pause. Long. The fork stopped moving. Then it started again. Slower now. Like a man trying to remember something. When she finally turned, the plate was empty. He sat staring at it, fork still in his hand. Thursdays. His voice came out rough, rusty. Ruth made this. Thursdays. Clara dried her hands on her apron. Picked up the coffee pot. I'll make it again Thursday, if you want. He nodded once, stood, took his plate to the basin, and washed it himself. First time he'd done that since she arrived. At the door. He stopped. You got a name? Clara. Another nod. He walked out into the bright afternoon. That evening, he found her on the porch steps. The sun was going down, painting the hills in shades of rust and gold. He stood above her, awkward, a man unused to words. You said free. I did. That ain't happening. Clara looked up at him. His face was unreadable against the fading light. $2 a week, room and board on top. That's too much. I don't need. Didn't ask what you need. Somewhere in the dark, a coyote started up. Another answered. A person works, a person gets paid. That's how it is. Clara's throat tightened. She looked away, toward the barn, toward anywhere but his face. All right then. All right. He went inside. She stayed on the porch until the stars came out, counting them like coins she'd never expected to hold. $2 a week. first honest wage anyone had offered her in 2 years. She slept in the small room off the kitchen that night. Narrow bed, clean sheets she'd washed herself, window facing east, where the sun would wake her. She didn't unpack her carpet bag. Not yet. But she set it on the floor, instead of keeping it on the bed. A week later, Daniel rode into town. Martha Lane stood behind the counter at the general store, eyes sharp as broken glass. She watched him tie his horse, watched him walk through the door, watched him set his list on the counter without a word. "Heard you got company out there." "Daniel." He didn't answer. Pointed at the flower. "Big woman, folks say." Folks. Came in walking, city clothes, all dusty. Martha weighed out the flower, her hands busy while her mouth worked faster. "People are talking. People always talk. They're saying she might be running from something, might be trouble." Daniel looked at her then, took his time. "Martha, you've known me 30 years. I have. 30 years. You ever see me take in a liar?" Martha's hands stopped on the scale. "She's my cook. She does her work. That's the whole of it." He picked up his supplies, dropped coins on the counter, walked out. Martha watched him go. Her lips pressed thin as paper. She turned to the next customer, old Hank Morrison, buying tobacco. "Well, I never..." But that night, lying in bed beside her snoring husband, Martha thought about Daniel Sawyer, thought about his face when she'd called the woman trouble. Something in his eyes she hadn't seen in 4 years. Something alive. She filed it away, kept it close. And in a hotel room 40 miles east, Harold Whitfield unfolded a telegram from Kansas City. His brother Marcus had surfaced in San Francisco. Broke and desperate. The woman who could send him to prison was somewhere in Kansas territory. Harold read the telegram twice. Then he started packing. 3 weeks changed the ranch. Clara stood at the kitchen window, watching the morning light hit glass that actually let it through now. She'd scrubbed those panes until her arms burned. Worth it. The sun came in gold instead of gray. The curtains hung fresh. She'd beaten the dust out of them, washed them in the creek, hung them to dry in the afternoon heat. They smelled like sage and clean wind now. Outside, the herb garden showed green shoots pushing through dark soil. She'd transplanted wild rosemary, sage, and thyme from patches she'd found behind the barn. Her back had ached for 2 days after clearing the weeds and turning the earth. She hadn't complained. The bread was rising on the counter. Every morning now, she baked. The smell woke Daniel before dawn. She heard his boots hit the floor. Heard him pause in the hallway like a man surprised to find himself hungry. He ate at the table these days, not standing by the barn door, not from his hands like an animal. She'd fixed the squeaky hinge on the barn door last Tuesday. Hadn't asked permission. Just found the oil can. Worked the metal until it swung silent. Daniel had noticed. Hadn't said anything. But he'd looked at the hinge, then at her, then walked away with something different in his shoulders. This evening, she was rolling pie crust. Apple. The apples had come from a tree at the edge of the property. She'd found it on one of her walks. Branches heavy with fruit nobody had picked in years. She hummed while she worked, an old song her mother used to sing, before the fever took her. Clara barely remembered the words, just the melody, rising and falling like breath. Her left hand pressed the rolling pin forward, then back. Forward, then back. The rhythm was everything. She didn't hear him come in. Didn't mean to startle you. Clara's hands jerked. Flour puffed into the air. She turned, heart hammering against her ribs. Daniel stood in the doorway. How long had he been watching? It's fine. I was just... She gestured at the dough, the rolling pin, the bowl of sliced apples waiting. Apple pie, if you like apple. I like apple. He sat at the table. Didn't leave. Clara went back to the crust, but her hands had lost their rhythm. She could feel him there, solid and quiet, taking up space in a room that had been hers alone for weeks. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, just full. She finished the pie, lit it, slid it into the oven, wiped her hands on her apron. 3 a.m. Clara woke to darkness and the sound of her own breathing, ragged and fast. The dream clung to her courtroom walls. Faces staring. The judge's voice reading charges that weren't hers, that were never hers. She threw off the thin blanket, her nightgown stuck to her skin, damp with sweat. The kitchen? She needed the kitchen. She sat on the floor, back against the wall, knees pulled to her chest. The stones were cool through the cotton. Her breath came in shallow gulps. Footsteps in the hall. Daniel appeared in the doorway, a lamp in his hand. The light swung shadows across his face. Clara. She scrambled to stand. I'm sorry, I didn't mean I'll be quiet. Sit down. She froze. Sit. Down. He lowered himself to the floor across from her. His knees cracked. He set the lamp between them, and the flame steadied, casting a small circle of gold. They sat in silence, just breathing. Then he spoke. The words came slow, dragged up from somewhere deep. I was in Abilene when Ruth got sick, selling cattle. 3 days' ride. He stared at the flame. By the time the telegram reached me, she was already in the ground a week. Clara watched his face, the lines carved deep around his mouth. I don't sleep in our bed. Can't. Still smells like her. He picked at a crack in the floorboard. So, whatever you're carrying, you ain't carrying it alone. The words hung in the air between them, and Clara's voice came out small, broken at the edges. They said I stole money, $15,000. I didn't. She pulled her knees tighter. My partner, he forged my name, took everything and ran. I was the one they arrested. You go to trial. Acquitted. Not enough evidence. A sound escaped her throat. Not quite a laugh. But acquitted ain't the same as innocent. Not to people. It is to me. She looked at him then. Really looked. You don't know me. I know you fixed my barn door without being asked. I know you wash your own dishes. I know you wear my wife's apron like it means something. He met her eyes. That's enough. He stood, held out his hand. She took it. His palm was rough, calloused, warm. He pulled her to her feet. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep making that pie. The corner of her mouth moved, not quite a smile. Almost. 2 days later, Clara found him by the barn. I should leave. Daniel didn't turn around. He was mending a harness. Leather strips spread across the workbench. No. Daniel. People are talking. Martha Lane told the whole town I'm some kind of criminal. If they find out about Kansas City about the trial, your name gets pulled into it. My name's been mud since Ruth died. He set down the awl. You think I care what these people say? You should care. He turned then. Something hard in his eyes. Why they gonna stop buying my cattle, burn my house down? He shook his head. Words are just noise. I've been listening to noise for 4 years. This is different. You're right. It is. He stepped closer. Ruth is dead. Nothing changes that. But you're standing here telling me to throw you out because some widow likes to gossip. Clara's hands balled into fists at her sides. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection. And neither do you. His voice dropped. You want to leave? Leave. But don't dress it up as something noble. That's a coward's excuse. And you ain't a coward. He walked past her. Into the barn. The door swung shut behind him. Clara stood in the afternoon sun, dust settling on her shoes. She didn't leave. That evening, she reached for her old apron, the one she'd brought from Kansas City, stained and fraying. Daniel cleared his throat. There's another one, by the door. Ruth's apron. The faded roses. I couldn't. It's been hanging there 4 years. Ought to be used. Her fingers trembled as she lifted it from the nail. The fabric was soft, worn smooth by hands that weren't hers. She tied it around her waist. It fit. Daniel nodded once, walked outside. That night, Clara finally opened her carpet bag. She hung her spare dress on the hook behind the door, set her hairbrush on the small table by the window. She found paper in Ruth's old writing desk. A pen still usable after all these years. She began to write a letter to herself. To who she used to be, she was staying. But 40 miles east, Harold Whitfield's stagecoach had just crossed into Kansas territory. In the seat beside him, his brother Marcus stared out the window with the eyes of a man who had nothing left to lose. Days slipped into weeks. The rhythm found them. Clara learned the chickens. Daniel stood beside her at the coop, showing her how to reach beneath the hens without getting pecked. Hand flat. They think a fist is a threat. She tried. Her fingers trembled as she slid them under the warm feathers. The hen clucked, shifted, settled. Got it. She pulled out the egg with her left hand, still warm in her palm. Good. Now the brown one. Clara moved to the next box. The brown hen watched her with one suspicious eye. That one bites? You could have mentioned that before. The hen pecked. Clara yanked her hand back. Egg intact, but fingers stinging. Name's Mabel. Was that a smile on his face? Gone too fast to tell. She bites everyone. You named your chickens. Ruth named them. Clara nodded. Let it sit. Didn't push. In the kitchen. She taught him things, too. Salt alone is lazy. She held up the rosemary. The thyme, a clove of garlic she'd crushed with the flat of her knife, left hand pressing down. The way she always did. You want to season it like you mean it. Daniel watched her rub the herbs into the beef. His arms were crossed, skeptical. Seems like a lot of trouble for a steak. That's the difference between eating and dining. Mr. Sawyer. Daniel. He ate the steak that night. Chewed slow. Set down his fork and looked at the plate like it had betrayed him. All right. Maybe you got a point. She almost smiled, caught herself, looked away. They fixed fences together in the south pasture. She held the posts while he hammered. The sound ringing across the empty hills. Neither spoke. The work filled the space where words would have gone. On their ride back, Daniel pointed toward a small farmhouse on a distant hill. Tomato plants visible even from here. Neat rows catching the late sun. Old Patterson lives there. Retired judge from St. Louis. Spent 30 years handling fraud cases, document forgeries, that sort of thing. Daniel squinted at the hill. Keeps to himself mostly. Grows tomatoes now. Clara filed the information away. Didn't know why. Just felt like something worth remembering. One afternoon, she pointed at the old well behind the barn. Stones crumbling, wooden cover rotted through. That been dry for years. You actually check, or you just decide. He stared at her. She stared back. They spent the next hour digging out the debris silt, leaves, a bird's nest, years of neglect. Her back screamed. Her hands blistered. Her left palm gripped the shovel handle until the wood bit into her skin. Water seeped through the bottom. Clear and cold. Daniel stood at the edge, looking down at what he'd missed. 3 years. 3 years I've been hauling water from the creek, and this was right here. Sometimes you stop seeing what's close. He looked at her then. Something shifted in his face. He didn't answer. Didn't need to. The apple pie changed things in town. Daniel brought it with him on his supply run. Wrapped in cloth, still warm from the oven. He set it on Martha Lane's counter. "What's this you trade? For flour and sugar?" Martha unwrapped the cloth. The smell hit her cinnamon, brown sugar. Butter worked into the crust until it flaked at a touch. She cut a slice, took a bite. Her eyes closed. "Daniel Sawyer." She opened her eyes. "Where on God's green earth did you get this pie?" "My cook made it." "That woman, the heavy one." Daniel's jaw tightened. He waited. Martha took another bite. Slower this time. Savoring. "This is proper cooking. Like a restaurant. Like Kansas City or St. Louis. Her name is Clara, and she was the best in Kansas City. So she says." Martha set down the fork. She wiped her fingers on her apron, studying Daniel's face. "Well," she cleared her throat. "I suppose I might have judged too quick." "Might have. Don't get smug with me. Daniel Sawyer. Wouldn't dream of it." He picked up his supplies and left. That afternoon, Martha Lane told 3 different customers about the pie. Her voice had changed, not gossip anymore. Something closer to respect. "You know that woman at Sawyer's place turns out she's a real chef? Trained? Makes a pie that would bring a grown man to tears?" Old Hank Morrison raised an eyebrow. "That's so. I'm telling you, best thing I've tasted in 20 years. The story spread. By sundown, half the town had heard about the mysterious cook at the Sawyer Ranch who made pie like an angel. Evenings belonged to the porch now. Clara sat on the top step. Daniel stood by the railing, coffee in a tin mug, watching the sun go down. Cicadas sang in the tall grass. The air smelled of dust and sage and cooling earth. "When I was young," Clara said, "maybe 12, I used to dream about a place like this." Daniel sipped his coffee, didn't interrupt. Small, quiet. Nobody looking at you like you were something scraped off their shoe. She watched a hawk circle over the far hills. "I'd imagine a little house somewhere out west. Garden in the back. Chickens. Maybe. A place where nobody knew my name or my business. And now I don't know what I dream about anymore." The hawk dove, disappeared into the grass, rose again with something small and limp in its talons, Maybe that can come back, Daniel said. Clara looked at him, studied the lines in his face, the gray at his temples, the way he held his mug with both hands like he was trying to warm himself, even when the evening was mild. You're a strange man, Daniel Sawyer? So I've been told. You take in a stranger, don't ask questions, pay her wages when you could have given her a barn to sleep in and called it charity. Would you have taken the barn? Yes. Then it's good I didn't offer. She laughed. The sound surprised her. Rusty, small, like a door that hadn't been opened in years. Daniel heard it. His shoulders dropped an inch. Something in him loosened. Neither of them moved to go inside. The rider came the next afternoon. Clara saw him from the kitchen window, a gray horse, a man in a brown coat, moving slow up the road to the ranch. Daniel was in the barn. She watched him step out, wiping his hands on a rag, walking to meet the visitor. Sheriff Eugene Crawford dismounted at the gate. He was past 60, weathered like old leather, with eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. Clara couldn't hear them from the window, but she watched. Daniel's posture changed. His back straightened. His hands went still at his sides. Crawford talked, gestured toward the east, handed Daniel a piece of paper. Daniel read it. Read it again. Crawford mounted up, tipped his hat, rode away. Daniel stood by the gate for a long time. The paper was still in his hand. When he came inside, Clara was at the stove, stirring a pot of beans with her left hand. She didn't turn around. Who was that? Eugene Crawford? Sheriff? I know who the sheriff is. She stirred. What did he want? Daniel sat at the table. Set the paper down. Man came through town last week. City man. Good suit. Asked questions. Clara's hand stopped on the spoon. About what? About a woman? Heavy set? From Kansas City? The beans bubbled. Clara didn't move. What did the sheriff tell him? Nothing. Eugene doesn't answer questions from strangers. Daniel's voice was flat, careful. The man gave his name eventually. Harold Whitfield. The spoon slipped, clattered against the pot. Clara. She gripped the edge of the stove. Her knuckles went white. He's Marcus's brother. The one who covered everything up. Her voice came out thin. He's got money. Connections. If he's here, he's gone. For now. Eugene sent a telegram to Kansas City, asking about the Whitfield family, waiting on a reply. Clara turned. Daniel was watching her, his face unreadable. Eugene wanted you to know. Someone's looking. Might be nothing. Might be something. It's not nothing. Her legs felt weak. She sat in the chair across from him. Harold Whitfield doesn't travel for nothing. He's protecting his brother. Protecting the family name. From what? From me. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table, a candle burning low, pen in her left hand. The letter lay half finished before her, another letter to herself, to who she used to be. Daniel's footsteps in the hall. She didn't look up. Writing to someone? No one. She folded the paper, slid it under her hand. Just something I do. He sat across from her. The candlelight carved shadows in his face. Looks like a letter. It is, sort of. She stared at the flame. I write to myself, to who I was before. Before all of it. What do you say? Clara was quiet for a long moment. Things I couldn't say to anyone else. Things I needed to hear. She traced a finger along the edge of the paper. I know it's foolish. It's not foolish. Daniel leaned back. That's surviving. She looked at him. You ever write to Ruth? The silence stretched. The candle flickered. No. His voice was rough. But I talk to her sometimes. Out loud. When I'm in the fields. And there's nobody to hear. He looked away. That's probably worse. No, it isn't. They sat there, the candle burning between them. Go to bed, Clara. Morning comes early. She gathered her letters, stood, paused at the door. Daniel. Yeah. Thank you. For not thinking I'm crazy. Same to you. She went. He sat in the dark, watching the candle gutter and die. A week passed. Clara was kneading bread when she heard the horses. 2 riders. Coming up the road, not from town, from the east. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked to the window. Her heart stopped. She knew that face. Knew that smile, smooth and easy. The smile of a man who'd never paid for anything in his life. Marcus Whitfield. Beside him, his brother Harold. They dismounted at the gate, looked at the house, at the clean windows, the smoke rising from the chimney, the signs of life where there had been none. Marcus straightened his coat. He was thinner than she remembered. The years hadn't been kind, but the smile was the same. The smile she saw in nightmares. Clara's hands shook. She gripped the counter. She could run, slip out the back door, hide in the barn, wait for them to leave. But she was tired of running. She untied her apron, Ruth's apron, and hung it carefully on the nail. Smoothed her dress, lifted her chin. Then she walked to the door and opened it. Hello, Clara. Marcus's voice was silk over broken glass. You look well. Country life agrees with you. Clara said nothing. Her hands were steady now. Her face was stone. Harold stepped forward. Business clothes, business face, business voice. We're here with a proposition, a generous one. He smiled the smile of a man used to buying whatever he needed. My brother made mistakes. He understands that. We're prepared to compensate you for the inconvenience. $500. You stay quiet. We all move on with our lives. Quiet about what? About the whole unfortunate business in Kansas City? Clara looked at Marcus. He was sweating small beads on his upper lip, despite the cool morning. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Her voice was flat. Your brother stole $15,000. Forged my name. Let me stand trial for his crime. Marcus shrugged. That shrug, the same shrug he'd given when they'd led her away in chains. Ancient history. Let it go, Clara. You're free. Nobody's bothering you out here. Why dig up the past? Get off this property. Harold's smile tightened. The polish cracked. Just a little. Think carefully. If you refuse, we can make things very uncomfortable. For you. He glanced at the house. For your employer. Hoofbeats. Coming fast. Daniel rode in from the south pasture. He took one look at the 2 strangers, one look at Clara's face. He dismounted, walked toward them. Help you gentlemen with something. Harold extended his hand. Daniel didn't take it. We were just leaving. No, Daniel's voice was quiet, cold. You weren't. He looked at Clara. These the men from Kansas City. She nodded. The one who framed you, the younger one. Daniel turned to Marcus. Looked him up and down. Took his time. You look like a man who's used to buying his way out of trouble. Marcus laughed, high and nervous. I don't know what she's told you, but she told me enough. Harold stepped between them. Smooth, professional, controlled. Mr. Sawyer, this doesn't concern you. Private matter between my brother and Miss Webb? It became my concern when you rode onto my land and threatened my cook. We're not threatening anyone. Business proposition? Nothing more. Daniel's jaw tightened. Get off my property. Mr. Sawyer? I won't say it again. Harold's mask slipped. His eyes went hard. You're making a mistake. We have resources you can't imagine. One telegram to Kansas City, and every newspaper in the territory runs the story of the criminal you're hiding. She's not a criminal. She was acquitted. Acquitted isn't innocent. Not to newspapers. Not to neighbors. Harold smiled. Think about your reputation. Think about what people will say. Daniel didn't flinch. Send your telegrams. I've buried my wife, buried my reputation, buried everything that matters. He stepped closer to Harold, close enough to count the threads in his collar. You think I'm scared of ink and paper? Marcus grabbed his brother's arm. Harold, let's go. This isn't worth it. Harold pulled free, but he was already stepping back. This isn't over, Sawyer. For today it is. They mounted up. Harold looked back at Clara. Think about our offer. $500. That's more than you'll see in 5 years of cooking for this dirt farmer. They rode away. Dust settled in their wake. Clara watched them disappear over the hill. They'll come back. I know. They'll ruin you. They'll ruin both of us. Daniel picked up his hat from where it had fallen, knocked the dust off against his leg. Maybe. He looked at her. Or maybe they'll find out this town isn't as easy to buy as they think. But Clara saw what he didn't see. Marcus had been sweating. Harold had been nervous. They hadn't come all this way just for her silence. They'd come because they were scared of something. And scared men were the most dangerous kind. Harold Whitfield worked fast. By the next morning, a man stood outside the Dusty Spur Saloon. He had a voice like a rusty saw and breath that smelled of whiskey. But Harold's coins had made him talkative. You hear about the woman at Sawyer's Ranch, convicted thief from Kansas City, embezzled $15,000, hiding out here under a false name. Men stopped to listen. Some laughed and walked on. Others lingered. Sawyer's harboring a criminal. What's that tell you about his judgment? The word spread. By noon, they'd reached the general store, the church steps, the blacksmith's forge. By evening, half the town had heard some version of the story. Harold visited Martha Lane that afternoon. He wore his best suit, carried a leather satchel, spoke in the measured tones of a man used to boardrooms and bank offices. I thought you should see these. He spread papers on her counter, newspaper clippings, a document with a signature at the bottom, a sketch of Clara from the trial. For the town's protection, you understand? Martha studied the documents. Her reading glasses sat low on her nose. This says she was acquitted. A technicality. Everyone in Kansas City knows she did it. I don't live in Kansas City. Martha looked up. I live here, and I know what I've seen. What you've seen is a woman hiding from justice. Martha folded her arms. What I've seen is a woman who fixed Daniel Sawyer's well and makes pie that could make a preacher weep. She pushed the papers back toward him. I don't know you, Mr. Whitfield. I've known Daniel Sawyer 40 years. Harold's smile thinned. Keep the papers. Read them again when you have time. He left them on the counter. Martha watched him go, her lips pressed tight. That night, she walked to the sheriff's office. Eugene Crawford sat behind his desk, a cup of cold coffee at his elbow, reading by lamplight. Eugene, what do you make of this Whitfield business? He took the papers, read them slow, the way he did everything. I make that there's two sides to every story. He set them down. This man only brought one. What's the other side? Crawford reached for his hat. That's what I aim to find out. Already sent a telegram to Kansas City, asking about the Whitfield family and that embezzlement case. Should hear back in a day or two. Clara rode into town 3 days later. She needed flour, salt, coffee beans. She didn't know about the handbills. They were everywhere, nailed to fence posts, stuck to walls, piled on the counter at the general store. Not wanted posters. Harold was too smart for that. But notices, official looking. With her name in bold letters, public warning Clara Webb, formerly of Kansas City, wanted for questioning regarding embezzlement. Citizens advised to avoid business dealings. She saw the first one outside the feed store. The words blurred. Her hands went cold on the reins. People stared. A woman crossed to the other side of the street, pulling her children close. 2 men stopped talking when she passed, their eyes following her like she was something dangerous. Outside the general store, a man blocked her path. Big shoulders. Mean eyes. We don't serve your kind here. Clara's throat tightened. I just need flour. Get it somewhere else. Thief. Something flew past her head. Missed. Hit the dirt behind her. She didn't see what it was. Go back where you came from. A child laughed. High and cruel. Clara backed away. Her boot caught on a stone. She stumbled. Kept her footing. Barely. Martha Lane appeared in the doorway of the general store. Let her through, William. But Mrs. Lane, I said let her through. Clara walked into the store. Her hands were shaking. Martha gave her the flour. Didn't charge. Take the back door. There's a crowd forming out front. Clara left through the back. Walked to her horse. Someone had written thief in the dirt beside it. She rode home. Didn't stop. Didn't look back. That night, Daniel rode into town alone. The dusty spur was crowded for a Thursday. Harold Whitfield sat at a table near the back, holding court. Men clustered around him, listening to his smooth voice, his city words, his careful lies. Daniel pushed through the doors. The room went quiet. He walked straight to Harold's table. You've been busy. Harold smiled, lifted his whiskey glass. Just sharing information. People have a right to know who's living among them. That's so. Daniel looked around the room, every face watching. Then let me share some information too. He raised his voice. Not shouting? Just clear? The voice of a man who expected to be heard. This man's brother stole $15,000 from investors in Kansas City, forged an innocent woman's signature. When the law came looking, he ran. left her to face the charges alone. Harold laughed. That's a convenient story. It's the truth. She went to trial. She was acquitted. You know what that means? A judge and 12 jurors looked at the evidence and said she didn't do it. She got off on a technicality. She got off because she's innocent. Murmurs rippled through the room. Men shifted in their seats. Marcus stood up from the corner where he'd been hiding. His face was flushed, drunk, maybe, or just scared. You're taking the word of a fat cook over ours. Look at her. She's nobody. We're the Whitfields. Our family built half of Kansas City. The room went very still. Daniel's voice dropped. Ice cold. Your family stole from honest people and blamed a woman who had nothing but her name. He stepped closer. And you took that too. Marcus backed into his chair. So here's what's going to happen. Daniel looked around the room, made eye contact with every man there. You two are going to ride back to Kansas City. You're going to tell the truth, and if I see either of you in this territory again, I'll personally escort you to Eugene Crawford's jail. Harold stood. Slow, controlled. You and what authority? You're just a rancher. I'm a rancher who's lived here 44 years. My father's buried in that churchyard. My wife, too. Daniel's voice was steady. Every man in this room has known me since I was born. How long have they known you? Silence. Sheriff Crawford stood up from his corner table. Nobody had noticed him there. I think that's enough excitement for one evening. He adjusted his belt. Mr. Whitfield? Mr. Whitfield. Time for you gentlemen to find lodgings elsewhere. Harold's face went red, then white. This isn't over. For tonight. It is. But Harold had one more card. He reached into his satchel, pulled out papers, slapped them on the table. This is the original contract. Clara Webb's signature. Right there. He jabbed his finger at the page. You want proof? There's your proof. Ask anyone who knows handwriting. Daniel looked at the document. The signature at the bottom. Clara Webb. Written in neat, slanting script. This is her handwriting. This is her crime. Harold's voice carried to every corner of the room. Word against evidence, gentlemen. Which one do you trust? Daniel picked up the paper. Studied it. This real? He asked, almost to himself. Real as the day she signed it. The room held its breath. Daniel folded the paper. Put it in his pocket. We'll see about that. He walked out. The doors swung shut behind him. Back at the ranch. Midnight. Clara sat at the kitchen table. The candle burned low. The forged contract lay before her. Daniel had shown it to her, watched her face go pale. I didn't sign that. I know. I told the court. I told them 100 times. They didn't believe me. Daniel sat across from her. Show me how you sign your name. Clara stared at him. Then she took the pen in her left hand, signed her name on a blank piece of paper. Daniel looked at it, looked at the forged signature. Do it again. She signed 3 more times. Each signature slanting left, the way a left-handed person writes. He held up all 4. Every one of these slants left. I'm left-handed. Always have been. Daniel nodded slowly. That forged signature. It slants right. Clara's breath caught. I told them. I told the prosecutor. I said a left-handed person couldn't have written that. They said it wasn't conclusive. Said I could have switched hands to hide my crime. Did anyone actually look? Someone who wasn't trying to put you in prison? Clara was silent. There's a man outside town, Daniel said. Cornelius Patterson, retired judge from St. Louis, spent 30 years on document fraud cases. I pointed out his place to you a few weeks back. Clara remembered. The small farmhouse on the hill. The tomato plants in neat rows. You think he'd help? Only one way to find out? Clara looked at the two signatures side by side, left slant, right slant. The same name written by two different hands. She'd known this all along. She'd screamed it in the courtroom. Nobody had listened. But maybe now, someone would. Tomorrow? She said. We go tomorrow. Daniel nodded. Tomorrow. But outside, in the darkness beyond the lamplight, a figure crouched in the shadow of the barn. He'd been paid to watch, to report, to let Harold Whitfield know exactly what the rancher and the cook were planning. He waited until the candle went out. Then he slipped away into the night. They came for her at dawn. Clara was collecting eggs when she heard the wagon. 3 men she didn't recognize. Plus Harold Whitfield riding alongside like a general surveying his troops. They didn't stop at the gate. They rode straight up to the barn. Clara Webb. Harold's voice carried across the yard. We need you to come with us for questioning. Clara's hands went still on the egg basket. The warm shells pressed against her palms. What questioning regarding the embezzlement case in Kansas City? New evidence has surfaced. Harold held up a paper, official looking, stamped and sealed. You can come quietly, or these men can escort you. Daniel came out of the barn. His shirt was half buttoned, his boots unlaced. He'd been mucking stalls. What's going on here? Legal matter? Mr. Sawyer? Doesn't concern you? Everything on my land concerns me. Daniel stepped between Harold and Clara. Let me see that paper. Harold handed it over. Daniel read it, his lips moving slightly. This says questioning, not arrest. She's been avoiding questioning for 2 years. That makes her a person of interest. Harold smiled that polished smile. We're just following proper procedure. Mr. Sawyer, surely you support proper procedure. Clara's legs were shaking. She gripped the egg basket tighter. Daniel looked at her. She saw it in his face, the calculation, the helplessness. If he fought them, they'd come back with more men. With real authority. With weapons. I'll come. Her voice came out thin. Just let me get my things. Clara. It's all right, Daniel. She set down the basket. One egg rolled out, cracked on the dirt. Yellow yolk spread across the ground. They'll find a reason to drag me out either way. Better to walk. She looked at him, tried to tell him with her eyes what she couldn't say out loud. Go to Patterson. Get the affidavit. Don't let them win. She went inside, packed her carpet bag. The same carpet bag she'd arrived with 2 months ago. It felt heavier now. Somehow, Ruth's apron hung by the stove. She touched the faded roses. Didn't take it. Outside, they put her in the wagon. No chains, Harold was too smart for that. But the 3 men surrounded her, and their eyes made it clear she wasn't a passenger. She was cargo. Daniel stood by the gate, watching them go. His hands hung at his sides, useless. Clara didn't look back. If she looked back, she'd break. They took her through town. Harold had planned it perfectly. Main Street, midday, Maximum audience. The wagon rolled slow. People stopped to stare. Clara sat straight-backed, eyes forward. But she could feel them. Every gaze, every whisper. That's her. The thief. I heard she stole $20,000. Look at her. Thinks she's too good to look at us. A child threw a rotten apple. It hit her shoulder. Burst open. Left a brown stain spreading across her dress. The smell of decay filled her nostrils. She didn't flinch. Didn't wipe it off. Serves you right. More things flew. A clod of dirt hit her back. An old potato struck the wagon beside her. Something wet splattered across her arm. She didn't want to know what it was. Martha Lane stood outside the general store. Their eyes met for 1 second. Martha looked away. The wagon stopped in front of the hotel where Harold was staying. He climbed down, offered Clara his hand like a gentleman helping a lady from a carriage. "Welcome back to civilization, Miss Webb." She ignored his hand. Climbed down herself. Her foot caught on the wagon step. Her ankle twisted. She stumbled forward. Hit the ground face first. The impact drove the air from her lungs. Dirt filled her mouth, gritty between her teeth. Her hand slid in something wet horse droppings, fresh from that morning. The smell hit her like a wall. Manure, urine, rot. Laughter erupted. Loud, everywhere. Clara pushed herself up. Her dress was ruined mud and worse smeared across the front. Her face was streaked with filth. Horse dung clung to her palms, her forearms, her chin. She tried to wipe it off. Made it worse. Smeared it across her cheek. More laughter. Louder now. Look at her rolling in filth like a pig. That's where she belongs. Fat Sow found her wallow. Clara got to her feet. Her ankle screamed. Her legs wobbled. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Harold stood above her, looking down with something that might have been satisfaction or pity. She couldn't tell which was worse. Perhaps a bath before questioning. You do seem to need one. She said nothing. There was nothing to say. A woman's voice cut through the laughter high, mocking, "No wonder nobody believed her. Look at her. Who'd believe anything that came out of that mouth?" Clara's hands shook. Her whole body shook. She'd been here before. On her knees while people judged her. In a courtroom while strangers decided her fate. In a jail cell while the life she'd built burned to ash. But this was different. This was public. Visible. Witnessed by people she'd fed. People she'd baked pies for. People who'd smiled at her just last week. Now they were laughing. They took her inside. Up the stairs. Into a small room with a single chair and a table. The smell of manure followed her. It was in her hair now, on her skin, in every breath she took. Harold sat across from her. Marcus lurked in the corner, picking at his fingernails. "Now then," Harold folded his hands. "Let's discuss your options." Clara stared at the table, at her own hands, still crusted with dirt and filth. The stench rose from her dress, from her hair, from every part of her. "You have two choices. Sign a confession admitting your role in the embezzlement, and we'll let you go quietly, somewhere far away. California, perhaps. A fresh start. I didn't do it." Or Harold leaned forward. "Harold, we pursue this further. New witnesses have agreed to testify that you were the mastermind, that my brother was merely your puppet. Those witnesses would be lying." Witnesses can be quite convincing when they want to be. Harold tapped the table. Your confession clears everything up, permanently. And destroys my name? Permanently? Your name is already destroyed. Harold gestured at her filthy dress, her matted hair, the manure still visible on her skin. Look at yourself. This just makes it official. Marcus spoke from the corner. His voice was thin, wheedling. Just sign it, Clara. What difference does it make? You're finished anyway. At least this way you get to start over somewhere new. Clara looked at him. The man who had ruined her life, who had stolen and lied and let her burn for his crimes. He looked small, pathetic, a weak man hiding behind his brother's money. No. Harold's jaw tightened. Think carefully. We can make things very unpleasant. You already have? This is nothing. Harold stood. Tomorrow, we take you back to Kansas City. The newspapers will be waiting. Every detail of your humiliation, the wagon ride, the fall, the filth will be front-page news. By the time we're done, there won't be a town in America that will take you in. He walked to the door. You have until morning to change your mind. They left. The door locked behind them. Clara sat in the small room, alone. The smell of horse manure rose from her ruined dress. Her face was still streaked with mud and filth. Her hands were still dirty. She looked at those hands. The hands that had built a career, a reputation, a life. Now caked with filth. All her life. She'd worked, scrubbed floors, burned her hands, built something, and every time she built, someone tore it down. She was so tired. In her pocket, folded small, was one of the letters she'd written to herself. She pulled it out. Careful not to smear it. Words from 3 months ago. Before Daniel. Before the ranch. Before any of this. Her own handwriting. Left slanting. Every letter. Every word. She looked at the paper Harold had left on the table, the forged contract with her signature. Left slant. Right slant. 2 different hands. She'd told them. They hadn't listened. But there was someone who might. Clara stood, walked to the window. 2 stories up. A narrow ledge. A drain pipe that might hold her weight. Below. The street was emptying. Twilight shadows stretched long across the dirt. Most folks had gone home for supper. She looked at the locked door. She looked at the window. Then she started to climb. The drain pipe held. Clara's arms burned as she lowered herself, inch by inch. Her ruined dress caught on the rough brick. Her shoes scraped against the wall. Below. The alley stretched dark and empty. 10 feet from the ground, her grip slipped. She fell. Hit the dirt hard. Pain shot through her ankle, the same one she'd twisted on the wagon step. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. Tasted blood. For a long moment, she lay there, breathing, listening. No shouts, no footsteps. They hadn't heard. She stood, tested her ankle. Fire ran up her leg. Not broken, but bad. She could walk. Barely. The papers were still in her pocket. The forged contract, Trocon. her own letter. The proof she needed. Judge Patterson's house was 2 miles outside town. Daniel had pointed it out weeks ago, the small farmhouse on the hill with the tomato plants. 2 miles. In the dark, on a twisted ankle, still covered in filth. Clara started walking. The road was empty. Moonlight silvered the grass on either side. Her shadow stretched long before her, limping, broken. Every step sent pain shooting up her leg. Her dress stank of horse manure. Her hair hung in matted clumps. Her hands were still crusted with dirt. She stopped twice to rest, leaned against fence posts, let the pain wash through her. She thought about giving up, about crawling back to the hotel, about signing Harold's confession and disappearing. It would be easier, so much easier. But then she thought about Daniel, the way he'd looked at her that first night, the way he'd said, "That's enough," when she asked why he trusted her. She couldn't sign a lie, not even to save herself. That was the one thing they couldn't take. Patterson's house appeared over the final rise. Small. Neat. Tomato plants ghostly in the moonlight. A lamp burned in the window. Clara limped to the door. Knocked. The door opened. An old man stood there, white beard. Sharp eyes. A book in his hand. He looked at her. At the ruined dress, the filthy face, the way she favored her left leg. "Who are you?" "Clara Webb." Her voice cracked. "Daniel Sawyer told me about you. Said you handled fraud cases, document forgeries." She pulled the papers from her pocket, held them out with shaking hands. "Please, I need your help." Patterson studied her for a long moment. Then he stepped aside. "You'd better come in." He spread the documents on his kitchen table. The forged contract, Clara's own handwriting samples, the letters she'd written to herself. He examined each one with a magnifying glass, making notes, taking his time. Clara sat across from him. Her ankle throbbed. Her whole body ached. She hadn't slept in 2 days now. The room swam at the edges of her vision. "Who did the analysis for the original trial?" Patterson asked. "Some clerk. I don't know his name." Patterson shook his head. "A clerk. For a $15,000 fraud case." He tapped the forged signature. "This is amateur work. The slant is wrong right-handed, when you're clearly left-handed. The pressure is inconsistent. And here," he pointed at the letter C, "you loop it left. This one loops right. I told them. I told everyone." "They didn't want to believe you." Patterson set down the magnifying glass. "There's a difference between not being able to see the truth and choosing not to look." He stood, walked to his desk, pulled out paper and pen. "I'll write an affidavit. State my qualifications. Document every discrepancy." He looked at her. "It won't change your acquittal, you're already acquitted. But it will prove beyond any doubt that you didn't sign this document." "How long?" "I'll work through the night. My 30 years on the bench taught me how to write fast when it matters." Dawn was breaking when Clara left Patterson's house. The affidavit was in her pocket, signed, witnessed, official. Her ankle had gone numb. Her body moved on something beyond exhaustion. She hadn't slept in over 40 hours now. She walked toward town, one foot in front of the other. Halfway there, she saw riders coming. Daniel, Sheriff Crawford, 2 other men from town. They reined up when they saw her. "Clara." Daniel's voice was rough, hoarse. He hadn't slept either. "We've been looking all night. I found what I needed." She held up the affidavit. Daniel took it. "Read it." Patterson. He worked through the night. Sheriff Crawford leaned forward in his saddle. "There's more." He pulled a paper from his coat. "Got a telegram back from Kansas City this morning. Marcus Whitfield has an outstanding warrant. Failure to appear for a deposition. After Miss Webb was acquitted, the investors started digging, found more forged signatures, more missing accounts. Clara's legs buckled. Daniel dismounted, caught her before she fell. "They knew." Her voice came out as a whisper. "They knew it wasn't me. They know it was him. That's close enough." Crawford looked toward town. "The Whitfields are still at the hotel. I'm heading there now." Daniel helped Clara onto his horse. She sat behind him, her arms wrapped around his waist, her cheek pressed against his back. Her legs shook. Her ankle screamed. But she was still upright. They rode into town together. Harold Whitfield was packing when they arrived. The sheriff's badge stopped him at the door. "Mr. Whitfield, your brother has a warrant in Kansas City. He's coming with me." Harold's face went white. "That's impossible. I made arrangements." "Your arrangements didn't hold." Crawford held up the telegram. "Investors found more evidence. Seems your brother didn't just steal from Miss Webb. He stole from everyone." Marcus appeared at the top of the stairs. His face was gray. "Harold, do something." Harold backed away. "I can't fight a warrant. You said you'd protect me." "I said I'd handle it. This is beyond handling." Crawford took Marcus by the arm. "Let's go." As they led him out, Marcus turned to Clara. She stood in the doorway, still covered in dried mud, still limping, still wearing the ruins of yesterday's humiliation. "This isn't over. You'll pay for this." Clara met his eyes. Her voice was steady. "I already paid? For 2 years? Now it's your turn." She turned and walked away. Behind her, Marcus's threats faded to nothing. But Clara was already thinking about something else. About a kitchen. About people who had nothing. About being the help she'd never had. She had work to do. A week later, the papers told a different story. Clara sat at the kitchen table. The newspaper spread before her. The headline read, "Kansas City fraud, real embezzler, arrested, cook cleared." She traced the words with her finger. Her name was there too, but different now. Not thief, not criminal, victim. Daniel poured coffee, set a cup beside her. "Feel different?" "Some." She folded the paper, pushed it aside. Her ankle still ached. She'd wrapped it tight this morning, the way she did every morning now. "Got a letter yesterday. Restaurant in Denver. They want me back. Head chef. Good salary." Daniel's hand paused on the coffee pot. "That's good. Real good." "I haven't decided yet." She looked out the window. The sun was coming up over the hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. "I was thinking about something else." 3 weeks later, the soup kitchen opened. Reverend Miller had given them the church hall without hesitation. Daniel had built the tables himself, rough pine, sturdy, enough to seat 40. Clara had scrubbed the old stove until it gleamed. Now she stood behind it, Ruth's apron tied around her waist, ladling chicken and dumplings into tin bowls. The line stretched to the door. A widow with 3 children. A drifter with holes in his boots. A family whose farm had burned mother, father, 2 boys with hollow eyes, an old man with no teeth and nowhere to go. Clara served them all. Her left hand steady on the ladle, her ankle still tender beneath her. But holding, Daniel carried plates to the tables, poured coffee from a big tin pot, didn't say much, didn't need to. Martha Lane came through the door near noon. She didn't speak, just took a bowl, sat in the corner, ate slowly. When she finished, she left a nickel on the table, more than she could afford, and walked out without looking back. The old man sat alone, staring at his food. Clara walked over, sat across from him. "Something wrong? Why's this free?" His voice was thin, confused. "Nobody gives nothing for free." Clara looked at her hands, the burn scar on her wrist, the calluses on her fingers. "Someone gave me a chance once, when I had nothing, when I didn't deserve it." She stood, just passing it along. The old man picked up his spoon, started to eat. Evening came slow. The kitchen was clean. The tables were empty. Everyone had gone home. Clara and Daniel sat on the church steps, watching the sunset. The sky burned orange and red, fading to purple at the edges. Ruth would have liked this. Clara looked at him. "You think so?" "I know so." He stared at the horizon. She always said the best part of cooking was watching people eat. Silence settled between them. Comfortable now. Easy. "Daniel." "Yeah. When I showed up at your gate, did you know what, that I was telling the truth?" He thought about it. Took his time. "I knew you had honest hands." She laughed. Soft. Rusty. But real. "That's not a real answer." "Best I got." He took her hand. Rough against rough. Working hands, both of them, behind them. The church door stood open. Lamplight spilled out onto the steps. It would stay open. Tomorrow. And the day after. And all the days to come. Some stories leave something behind when they're done. A quiet weight in the chest. A tenderness that doesn't need words to explain itself. Perhaps you felt it too, that moment when Clara stood in the dirt, covered in filth, and chose not to break. Or when Daniel said those 3 small words on the kitchen floor, "That's enough." There's something familiar about being seen when you've stopped expecting it. Something tender about carrying a burden so long you forget it isn't yours to carry alone. Many of us have stood at gates we were afraid to open. Some of us have offered kindness when we had nothing left to give. And perhaps you know what it means to rebuild something: a kitchen, a name, a life, one quiet morning at a time. It's all right if this story sits with you a while longer. Some things aren't meant to be resolved. They're meant to be held gently, then set down when you're ready. The church door stayed open. That's enough to know. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying all the way to the end.